Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and in this one, it's official. I just found out I can vote in the Swedish election. I had no idea. I'm a permanent resident in Sweden, but I'm not a Swedish citizen. I will double check to make sure it's not just the local election. I'm pretty sure it's for everything, and I'm super excited about it. Wow, my opinion really matters, and I'm gonna have a say in this election. I've been following it, and it's going to be awesome. But I've been following the election as kind of an outsider. I haven't really taken the time to think about who I would actually pick. I've talked to my girlfriend, and I think we're going to go through and watch SVTV play again and watch all the politicians talk about the future of Sweden and kind of pick who we think is best for that. I also got to look at all their plans to see what it is because, it's, like I said, it's such an important election. I want to stress to you, if maybe this is your first time you can vote and you don't feel like voting or you haven't voted in the past, this election is so close between three of the main parties that your voice really, really does matter. And if you think it doesn't matter, go out there and vote because I'm telling you, you're going to regret it. As someone that I have to admit, there have been times I haven't voted in the U.S., and I've regretted that. I felt like my opinion didn't matter, but it was a silly opinion to have. I was immature. And I regret that very much now, and I want to say to you, I don't want you to have the same kind of regret I did. Also, if you vote and you don't like whatever party takes the main control, then you can complain. But if you don't vote, then you really can't complain if you're of age to vote. That being said, though, I started following things more about like what are the most important issues that most people are saying in this election, and they have been like safety, integration, education, and like medical wait times and how the medical things can be better. And as I was going on my run today, I started thinking about what's the most important thing to me. And as I really thought about on my run, it has to be education. Now, I work in education, but I also believe that education is one of the most important things in society in general, and I think it fixes a lot of problems. I think a lot of time, crime, for example, could be linked with poor education or someone that doesn't have a good education. Education, if you think about it, is a way to freedom. The more you know, the more opportunities you have. If you know how to cook, for example, yeah, you can feed yourself. If you know how to fix things, that's important. And sometimes we just take for granted the ability to be able to read. Like, I love to read and take in knowledge. If you can't read, that's really something that lacks because reading helps your critical thinking. And think about it, in today's world, education is going to matter more and more and more. There are going to be fewer jobs where it's going to be a lot more competitive. If you just look at people, for example, that maybe have a job where they drive a car or a bus, maybe 20 years from now, we will have, automated driving will be the norm. It might be closer than we think. Also, if you go to grocery stores and dealing with the human while you buy stuff, I mean, Amazon has a store where you don't even have to talk to anybody. You can walk in and out, and computers find that. The future is coming faster. Retail, for example, is going to be hit hard. So we have to think about how we're educating people for the future. Also, maybe things people learned 10, 15 years ago aren't as important as how they are now, and we might have to change some things in education. So it's just an overall, I just want to stress how important that is. But going into it, I think there's a couple of things that we could do better in education, so I'm just speaking directly to you politicians and everybody else that's watching. And I'm speaking overall, I'm not speaking about a particular school, I'm just talking about overall what I see. In 2005, we had the refugee crisis, and we didn't plan for this, and so, I mean, it was difficult for everybody in education, but I think we could do a better job of integrating and helping newly arrived students. Something that's always concerned me is if you come to Sweden and you don't know Swedish at first, and how are we going to identify a learning disability? So that's one thing that I think is very difficult, is that if you already have a learning disability, but then you also have the language barrier, it might be hard for people to see that. You might be dyslexic, for example, or have some other disability, and it's going to be hard to identify, and I can't imagine what that must feel like. So that's one thing I think that we could do better. Another thing is, I think that we have to really look at bringing more people in that maybe has the same mother tongue to help teach students, or just have them in the school to help us around. Maybe that means giving people like emergency certification to help. And I think maybe it might be a good idea for some students to take certain things in their mother tongue, if at all possible. Another possibility that we could do is maybe if someone's newly arrived, they have the chance to just learn Swedish first, because there are some students that I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe they've only been in the country for a couple weeks, and then they really didn't have an education before, and then they're put into a classroom with the same age peers. And I agree that social, being with the same social group is really, really important. But if they're at like a 5th grade level and everybody is at a year 9 level, we're setting them up for failure from the very beginning. And so I think we have to find a better way to identify learning disabilities, help people find their right level they're in, either teach them Swedish right away, or have some teachers that have had the same mother tongue that are working with them. Those are things that I think that we could really help there. So that's one thing. Next, I think an important thing that we could do in Sweden that we do in the United States, and I actually think it works really, really well, is have some kinds of sports activities connected with the school. We did this in the United States in troubled schools and areas, but just in general, where the kids could have sport outside of school. And the kids had to have good grades, they had to have good behavior to be able to play on these sports teams. And something you have to think about that maybe you don't think about is maybe we never know what anybody's home situation's like, number one. Number two, maybe some kids' families can't afford to have them be in clubs or sports things. Maybe it's not a possibility. We don't know that. So by offering something positive for the kids outside of the school, I think that could be very, very, very helpful. And then, again, it creates a new job. I mean, that would be an awesome job. You could have people in college coaching soccer at the schools or something like that in the universities. That could be something very, very fun to have an after-school program like that that's connected with the schools. It's giving people jobs. It's keeping kids out of trouble. And let's face it, you learn a lot of things about sports that help you in the real world. And it's just a great thing to learn team sports and, team spirit and those kind of things. And then finally, I think something that Sweden really has to think about is what are they going to do about the teacher shortage? Because it's huge right now. And I understand that it was important for Sweden to come up with the law that everybody has to have their svensk legation, for example. But that's great. You want to have qualified teachers. But I believe that Sweden's going to have to get teachers from English-speaking countries as well to work in the schools. I don't think there's any way around that. I think that 5 years that's going to happen. And I think that the Swedish politicians could help, because I think they're going to have to either make a test in English or a class, or they're going to have to give teachers in other countries more permanent options here in Sweden to make the big move right now, to recognize maybe a degree from the United States in teaching or in the UK, so that teachers can have more options right now. Because right now, the way the current law system works is for a lot of people, maybe they can only do 1 year, for example. And I think that if you could give people a more permanent move, if people are willing to move to Sweden to teach, they're qualified teachers, find a way to make it as easy as possible for them to be here, find a job, and then stay here longer term, and even helping them out as well. I think that that would be such a good help for us, because I think even if we can recruit teachers and people that want to go to school here in Sweden, I think the shortage is going to happen quicker than it doesn't, and we're going to need those teachers. I've already seen communes in other parts of Sweden, I want to say it's in the north, where they're hiring teachers from England right now and recruiting them because they don't have a choice. So yes, in a perfect world, you'd have a lot of English teachers that could speak Swedish perfectly, for example, or a lot of Swedish teachers that could just do both. But we don't live in that world right now, and we have to find teachers from other countries. We're going to have to import them in. And that's very, very important. So we need to think about that. So those are my suggestions on how we can fix the problem there. I know this was a long video. I guess I'm passionate about it. I want to pass the question off to you guys. Who are you going to vote for and why? What's the most important issue to you? And which political party do you think has the best answer for the education issue in Sweden, or how it can be better? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? If you like this kind of content, can you go ahead and give me a like? If you're new to the channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I probably in the end won't tell you who I'm voting for because I believe it should be private, but this was a fun one for me because I wanted to talk about this in this kind of way because I thought you guys might find it to be interesting. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one.